Hey, you stole my title.
Okay. Oh yeah. Huh? All right. So hello. I'm gonna talk about my personal experience on why I like Python and why everyone should know it and learn it, especially for our Tuesdays. Okay. Simple, easy syntax, and the code is easy to read. Did I update these slides?
You did.
Okay, never mind. But I did add a different example. But for this contains duplicate, it's like easier to read compared to like if you were to write it in C++. And it's dynamically typed. So when you run the code, it already knows what type it is. So using these examples, S, N, and B, I have a string, integer, and a Boolean. I like don't need to like declare or see exactly what it is. And then if I print it, it's exactly what I want to print. Hello, 10, and false. And also in Python, I feel like this is possible in other language, but not possible in other languages too. You're able to just call all your variables in one line, which is what I think is looks clean. Print statements are cleaner too, in my opinion. And yeah, Ethan.
Python 2, Python 3 syntax?
It has Python in it. It has Python in it, so yeah. It's very popular. Software engineers, data analysts, mathematicians, accountants. I think like outside software engineers, Python is probably the most used language for like many other majors when it comes to like reading lots of data or doing tasks like opening files or very simple tasks to make like accounting easier. Why not use Python? Because it's a very easy language to learn. So for example, pandas is a Python library. If you have a file with like thousands of numbers just separated by a comma, only like 2 lines are needed. You're able to get the index, space it out each value, and it's cool. And then also like for machine learning, data analysis, you could look at linear regression with matplotlib and graph it directly with Python, just a few lines. So it's very useful when it comes to rigorous task or repetitive task. I mean, object-oriented programming and functional programming, Python supports both. It's great to implement objects and everything could be in the same file. With my experience with Java, if you want to make different classes, you just make a new file. You know, it takes an extra three clicks, but in Python, everything could be in one. And it also supports functional programming via lambdas. What that necessary is out of my knowledge as of now. Moving on to Python for interview questions. It's like not really the fastest language, you know, compared to what we all learned, but it's easy to read, write, explain, easy to declare data structures. And looking at this has cycle that we did on Tuesday, I think this is very easy to read. And arrays, lists, stacks, queues, and heaps, they're all like typed the same. They're all the same data structure, just the brackets. This is both good and bad, but I think it's good because you don't need to remember anything, you know, anything else, because it's very easy to modify the array. Yeah, speaking of stacks, iterative depth first search that we will probably go through later on in the weeks. It uses a stack, but a stack could just be declared as an array, but you're able to just use whatever you want with a stack, get the top of it, pop it, exactly the same. Moving on to some disadvantages. It's a little bit too simple. I will get more into that later. Indentation, it's like very picky between spaces and tabs, so it will be annoying, but also this is an advantage because we all should be good at indentation either way. It's slow and memory intensive. Most companies, pretty sure 100% of companies, their main big project probably isn't in Python. It's probably more of a little side thing or for scripts, because it's slow because it's a interpretive language. And if Python's the first language that you learn, it's very difficult to transition to others because you don't need to think about return types or what type of variable it is. So that's a disadvantage. And yeah, not really designed for high complex projects. Is more for the easiest way to code and learn. And that's it. Forgot about that. Any questions?
Yeah, how do you, what resources do you recommend when learning Python?
Like free code camp on YouTube, just like intro to Python, like 3 hours. Or yeah, I'll say that's like a good resource. If you're into like algorithms, Neat Code, he's like Python everything. And like, yeah, he's very clear, simple. And yeah, and like he shows you a lot of like Python tricks too that are very useful if you ever want to do like algorithms. Project wise, I'll say like if you're more into like data analyst or machine learning, this is like very good because it's like simple lines, and you could also just YouTube that too. W3 schools, anything online is good for Python. And there's a lot of resources too, because a lot of majors outside of computer science use it more often compared to others.
What is your favorite feature of Python?
Not really a feature, but I just like how like simple it is, easy to call. Yeah. All right, thank you.
All right, I'm going to be talking about null and optional. So first of all, how many of you know what a null point exception is? Or how many of you have encountered an error because one of your variables was null? Okay, so how can we avoid that? So the background about why we have null point exceptions is that in Java and most other languages like C++, maybe not Rust, every non-primitive variable can be null, and this represents that there's not a value assigned to it. This is the default value for every initialized variable. However, there's nothing in Java which explicitly tells another programmer whether or not a variable or return value will be null. For example, this code, it would have a bug, but you might say, where's this bug? So can anyone tell me where the bug is in this code? So you have this get full name function that takes in a person, and then you do some addition of the first name, middle name, and last name. And then you also have a constructor. Yes.
I think is it full name?
Yeah, it's in get full name, but where in get full name is the bug?
You don't have full name's the only one in there, is it?
Well, get full name is sort of like a, think of it as a function outside of the class, just like somewhere outside the class. Where is the bug? Where's the potential error? Yes.
Char at 0.
Yeah, so this char at 0, it won't always work. And the reason why is that middle name, get middle name, there's no guarantee that get middle name will not be null. Like if get middle name is not null, then this code works fine. But if get middle name suddenly all of a sudden becomes null, then that's an issue. And there's nothing in the constructor that prevents that from happening. For example, if we create a new person and put in null as a middle name, then when we call person.get middle name, this will be null, and null, there's no .char at 0 for null. Does that make sense, everyone? So how do we fix that issue? Well, the first thing that we could do is prevent, nip it out the bud and say, okay, in a constructor, when we're making a new person, we have to require that all the parameters are not null. So now, if someone tries to create a person with, say, null as a middle name, an error will be thrown right away in the constructor. And you may think, okay, that's not really fixing the issue, since that is that just like moving the error from the get full name to the constructor. But it does, and while that's right, it doesn't fix the issue. It does help, because now instead of it being in some random function downstream, when that person runs their code and then sees, oh, there's an error in the constructor. Oh, middle name has to not be null. It's easier for them to see that. And they could also, when they're using the constructor, they could just click on, go to where the constructor is defined and see, okay, first name, middle name, and last name, these are all non-null. So this is one way of putting null for being passed into the constructor. So what if we do want a null value? So, you see that this previous slide, we're now assuming that middle name, first name, and last name all are non-null. But what if we want, say, middle name to be nullable? Well, we can do that by removing the object that require non-null. So we're no longer requiring that middle name is non-null, and instead we're allowing it to be null. But this has the same exact issue as before, of where we had this get middle name function. There's nothing in this that says, okay, middle name is a nullable value. So a person, another engineer that's coding using this person class might use that get middle name and assume that it's a non-nullable value. That makes sense? So that's what this thing called optional is meant to solve. Optional allows for a programmer to explicitly mark that a value is optional, that a value is nullable. An optional can either be empty, which represents that it was null, or have a value that is non-null. And you see, we can use optional.empty to declare an empty optional and optional.of to fill that optional with a value. You can think of optional as like a slot, and either that slot is empty or it has a value, and that value is whatever you put inside. So this is an optional where the slot is a string. So here's some helper methods that come with optional. We can use .of nullable. This will, depending on what's passed in, either create an empty optional or an optional with a value. So if we pass in null, it'll create an empty one. A value, it'll create one with a value. Dot is empty, dot is present. Using these, we can check to see whether or not the optional is empty or that it has a value. So empty optional is empty will return, what do you guess? True. Has value optional dot is present, where has value optional is this line, what will that return? True. Dot get returns the value stored in the optional, or it throws an exception if the optional is empty. So a common pattern that you would see is first we check if the optional has a value, if there's something present in the optional. And then after that, we can then use dot get to get the underlying value in the optional. So now we can update a get middle name. We can use this optional dot of nullable. But that's not the only thing that we have to change. This now is invalid. Person.get middle name .char@ 0. Get middle name is not a string, so it doesn't. It's an optional string, so it doesn't have a .char@ value, .char@ function associated with it. So we can use that pattern that I described before of using this dot is present and then doing dot get. So first we check if the person get middle name is empty. So if the middle name does not exist, what do we want to do? Well, we can just return the first name plus the last name, Dean Shin. But otherwise, this means that the middle name is present. So we can use the middle name. So Dean W. Shin. That makes sense? All right. So this is good and all, but we can basically do the same thing with nulls. Like we could do person.get middle name equals null. And that would be basically the same thing. However, there are some helper functions that are attached to to optionals that make optionals like much nicer to deal with than nulls. So first of all, this dot map function, it'll take a function as a parameter. So this is a function that multiplies whatever number is in, whatever number is the input by 2. So it'll take that function as parameter and applies that function to the value held in the optional if it is present. So only if it is a present optional, only if there's a value stored in that optional, will apply that function. Or else returns the supplied value if the optional is empty. So based on those two things, we can see that we create an integer optional. Is optional full or empty? Empty, because this is unknowable and we're passing a null, so it'll create an empty optional. Then what we do is we print out integer optional. We first map it, and this will, if there's a value in the optional, it'll map that value and multiply by 2. Otherwise, if it was empty, and in this case it is empty, so this map does nothing, and we're at this line now. So if it was empty, then we just return 0. So this would print out what? Yes, anyone else? Yes, 0. What if instead of optional of nullable null, we had optional of nullable 3? 6, because it would map that 3 to be a 6, and then this or else, it only defaults to that value if the option was empty. So that would print out 6. Yes.
Is that and arrow engines too? Is that like a Java thing? Like,
Yeah, you could think of this as like a anonymous function. Yeah. Or like a lambda in Python. Yeah. Yeah, but that's Java function syntax. So now using that map and using that or else, we can rewrite a get full name to be clean it. I just created some variables to clean things up. But now that we can have a get a middle name. If that middle name is present, we map it to be first name plus middle name plus last name. Otherwise, we just do first name plus last name. So say if it was Dean Shin, no middle name, this line would do nothing, would default to Dean Shin. If say Won Hyuk was present as the middle name, we'd have Dean Won Hyuk Shin, and that would be our answer, and we wouldn't default to Dean Shin. So I hope that really, oh, okay, there's one more, however, there's one more error here. And what would that be? What get thing?
for the character,
Yeah, so why is this an issue potentially?
because it could be null. Or,
Well, middle name, we know that this will not be null.
or empty string.
Yes. So what if middle name, some bozo programmer pushed in an empty string as the middle name? We don't, that would then have an array index at the balance when we do char 0, because a string is basically like a array of characters, and char 0 is basically accessing the element at index 0. So if you pass an empty string, that's an empty array. So there is nothing at 0. So that would throw an error. So how do we deal with that with optionals? Well, there's some additional functions. One of them is called filter. Filter makes a present optional empty if it does not meet the supplied condition. So for example, this filter here, this is a function that returns true if the number is even and false if it's not. So basically it's you can do this as filter is even. So this following line, we have 3 in the integer optional. It does not meet this condition. So we're left with an empty optional. So then when we do this or else, it'll take that value, that default value. So this will print out 0. What if we had 4 though in the integer optional? Yes, it would print out 4 because it meets this condition. So it'll keep the value in the optional. So therefore this or else will not be taken. That makes sense? All right. And then what about null? 0. Yep, because it'll be, this filter will not apply anything. since it's an empty one. So we can just fix this with one line. We can say this get middle name. If it's only keep the value, only keep the middle name, only treat it as actually having a middle name if the middle name's length is greater than or equal to 1. So if it's an empty string, this will be the same thing as an empty optional. So then we're going to default to the first name plus the last name. Yes.
That's functional, so it's not actually modified that.
Yes, it does not modify the middle name. Yep. So to review, in Java and other languages with null, unexpected null pointing exceptions cause problems for programmers all the time. We can use assertions in the constructor to prevent unintended nullable values. But if we want, say, a nullable value, we want it to be either null or some value, we can use optionals to denote them. Optional functions, so the functions that we can use on an optional, can be used to transform values without having to worry about null pointing exceptions. And yeah, that was my presentation. Thank you all. Yes.
Why not just use a language that doesn't have any null, so you have to use optional?
Let's see. Because those languages suck. I'll say that.
That's the reason. Go Rust.
More so that legacy code bases will always exist, and that
Sure.
we make the best with what we have.
That's fair.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on. Oh yeah, definitely read up on these if you want to learn more about optionals. So we're moving on to a discussion. So how many of you heard about Elon Musk buying Twitter? So if you have not heard, after, what is it, like 6 months now? Elon Musk, yes.
Could he theoretically delete the platform? Because
I mean, technically, yes.
Shareholders would.
Yeah, I mean, like they were,
I keep thinking about that every time.
I mean, he's not likely to.
He doesn't want to be on top. Twitter isn't
Yeah.
a bad idea.
Yeah, but I mean, why would you do that when? What we'll talk about. So he finally bought Twitter, putting aside the political ramifications. Of course, there's all these ramifications from having someone who's like politically active and like has a super strong opinion leading a content platform. But the consequences for Twitter employees themselves has been pretty severe. He has already dismissed Twitter's current board. So the CEO has been fired. I think the chief marketing officer has also been fired, and fired many of his executives. And although Elon disputes this number, sources claim that he plans to cut 75% of Twitter's workforce. And there's already like a first round of layoffs planned that will reportedly target 25% of its current employees. These employees will likely be poached by other tech companies such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon, but that means that there's going to be even less opportunities for us as new grads to get into these companies. So that's pretty unfortunate. But the big issue for Elon is that it's not currently a profitable company. It's like losing millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars each year. In 2021, it had a net loss of 200 million. So the way that Elon thinks to solve this is by growing its subscription feature. How many of you knew that Twitter had a subscription feature? Okay, that's exactly why. That's exactly what Elon wants to fix. So he wants to grow it to become 50% of the company's revenue. However, doing this might drive users off the platform, right? If, say, for one example is that verification. How many of you know about verification on Twitter? Okay, to give background, verification is sort of like a check mark that's used to give like celebrities or famous people or like reporters, basically anyone with a platform out there, a sort of checkbox so that people know that they are the official them. So this is planned to become a paid feature, which people really don't like, because it's sort of like pay to say I am who I am and to prevent scammers from mimicking me. That's like people don't like that.
Or scammers can pay them.
Exactly. I don't think it's necessarily that scammers will be able to pay and then get verified.
Or it's just, even though you can't prove it, you don't get verified.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know the entire details, but it's definitely like it's definitely an unpopular choice. I'll say that. So I want you guys to discuss, sort of group together. Do you think that Twitter will become profitable under Elon Musk?
No, I don't even know what
Clearly, you guys love the practice. I don't know if that's you're verifying, you're just like, maybe you're most likely already. That's what I was thinking. He's cutting so many costs, like,
I think you're able to edit it, but like, I think you can see if you're not usable.
It's still gonna be a bigger.
It might be like that.
I mean, had that been a feature early on, I don't think a lot of customers would happen. But because it's like a sudden change, like I think it's gonna have the attention is gonna come from that sudden change. But I feel like we're really trying if like that was original stuff.
SMH.
Yes, you lunch code by GDSC.
I will fight back tooth and nail.
Because
If you force over $1 billion, though, you know, that's besides the point.
Here's the price. Here's the price.
yeah, we valuable is like, yeah, I'm dropping your weight.
All right. Does anyone want to share something that I talked about? Yes.
I think he probably will make it like, it won't be as negative as it was before, because I feel like if his goal is to make it profitable, that's what he's gonna do. And whatever he, like, whatever, like, the company and like him as like the CEO or whatever, and all the people he hires, whatever they need to do, they'll probably do it.
Yep.
So whatever, if people don't like what they're doing, it doesn't matter.
I feel like that subscription thing is gonna be a platform killer. People already don't like it, right? That making Twitter a bit paid. I don't think that's gonna be good at all for Twitter. Like it's gonna be a platform.
Subscription thing, yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like putting features behind a paywall is always like, you know, is not it's not good optics. Anyone else want to share something that they talked about? Yes.
I think it's kind of not a monopoly. And then there's no direct competitor in the social media space. And so a lot of people use Twitter for specific things that they can't use, like Snapchat or Instagram for. Perhaps they'll keep people on even with unpopular things going on.
What do you think those like monopolists, what do you think Twitter hits the niche for?
Short form commentary, I suppose. Like you know, blogs, but short.
Mm,
Facebook is perhaps the closest, but I don't see that.
yeah, yeah.
Most people do Twitter go to Facebook. Like Instagram, we're not gonna use Instagram if you wanna political tirade. So, I don't think it'll get much traction.
I do feel like, I mean, in short, the lifeblood of any social media company is that people want to be on it. Facebook has this issue where now it has this reputation for only being for old people. So like no young users are using Facebook. Will we see, like, if hypothetically, Twitter is seen as, only for a certain political faction of the US, I feel like that will definitely affect its success as a platform. So there's also like that whole huge aspect of it being Elon now at the head. Like regardless if they have good monetization features, if there's people don't want to be on it, then that's sort of like the biggest issue. I feel.
Sure, I mean, for a long time, my impression it's been viewed as very left.
Yeah.
But you still have random people on Twitter. Like,
Yep.
they'll just complain about not being verified.
Yep.
So I don't see it changing.
Yes.
I feel like a subscription feature on social media platforms is something that people are still pretty avoidant of.
Yeah.
And I think the people who are going to be most upset about this sort of checkmark verification are going to be smaller content creators who are already who are trying to get their name out there and be taken seriously as their fields. And putting the blue checkmark behind a paywall doesn't really make a lot of sense, especially if it's like it was mentioned before, it's just there to verify whether or not you're an actual person. And really, if you're driving the content creators away from the platform, you're driving away the content. So I do think that there will definitely be a decline in the user base for Twitter after this. Although, yeah, and I think that will decrease profits just by itself, getting less advertising revenue, or a difference than gaining more subscription fees.
I feel like likely immediately after there's going to be a boost in revenue from these services simply from slightly smaller content creators because they want to pay to get their faces out there, and after getting their faces out there, they're going to produce more content because they're getting more engagement. But then over time, the people who originally were verified through the old means are not going to like it. It's going to get oversaturated. Verification isn't going to matter as much as it did before, so no one's going to pay for it anymore, and then they're going to be stuck with a bunch of TikTok stars, and everyone will left.
Yep. Yeah, we're already seeing like people leave Twitter. Like there's like a headline about some OG video game journalist leaving the platform, and assumedly because of Musk taking over. Any other comments about Twitter takeover?
Did that person say where they went? Did they go to a new platform?
Well, they're like quitting.
Just
Quitting content. Also, another aspect that I didn't talk about is right now, Elon is running a very, very tight ship for the engineers. Like he is literally having his the people in his autopilot team at Tesla come in and review the code of Twitter workers and see like, are they actually contributing to the company? So it's a huge culture shock, not only for the platform, but also for like the engineers, because there's this perception that Twitter engineers are not working on anything because how many new features have been released on Twitter? Like only the edit feature really, that's like the one that sticks out. So Elon is trying to cut down, he's trying to make the company, he's like basically reshaping the company, both in terms of their model and also in terms of the organizational structure. So that's definitely interesting. to hear about. Yes.
I mean, like, he bought the company.
Yeah.
It's like saying like, oh, if you bought the company, you can't change it. Like,
Yep.
I feel like it's like wrong for you to judge him, like, or like him and his like, you know, team, whatever.
Yep.
Most likely he's probably not even making all of the decisions. It's probably like a team of people.
Yep.
But it's like wrong to judge. Like, obviously they bought it for a reason, so they want to change. You can't just be like, don't change it.
Yep.
Feel like you can judge from a professional standpoint. I think if someone making bad business decisions, we think they're making bad business decisions.
Yeah, but like you can't stop them. You could voice your opinion.
Yeah, that was the point of the discussion, though. It's just, do you think Twitter's gonna be profitable?
Yeah, I'm just like, I'll just say it.
If he cares, first of all, I don't think Elon Musk understands social media as much as he thinks he does. I don't think his team understands social media as much as they think they do. He's having car people review the coding.
Autopilot.
Review the people
Yeah.
working, and it's like the people who are working for his business with cars isn't working in the same structure as people who are working in a social media platform.
Yep.
It's not at all going to be the same. The output is not at all going to be the same. So instead, odds are this is going to turn into an addiction machine, most social media, and he's just going to capitalize on everything that has worked in the past, which is just basic behavioral conditioning and and specific reinforcement to get people on it. So the people that are going to be on it probably are just going to be people that are easily susceptible to those things. So the same type of people that are going to be scrolling on their Instagram every day. So yeah, there's going to be some people on it. Like he says, the teams are probably going to do their job. They're probably going to make it stay afloat if they can, if it isn't already too far gone. Because they can, because they have the money and coding ability. And they have the science to back it up. So sure, it might work as a social media platform, but it's not going to be Twitter.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely think, Twitter is going to exist, but it won't be Twitter. Like, it won't be the same Twitter as we see it today. Yeah.
Social media platforms have done that before.
Yep.
I think when Tumblr was initially bought out, that platform changed a lot.
Oh, yeah.
It's moved around.
Yeah. What a shame. Yeah, one other aspect is that his like main goal, in addition to I think with the subscription, boosting the subscription revenue to 50%, is also to make it more like WeChat in China, where WeChat is sort of like an everything app, of where you can play games, you could talk, you could view maps, etc., etc. I don't even know all the features that are on WeChat, but it's sort of like an everything app. So I think that's what he wants to do with subscription on Twitter, is to add all these additional features and not just make it a social media company, but to make it a social media company and also all these other things. So I think that's his end goal. All right, I think we are at a good spot. So let us move on. So how many of you were here for the previous Hacking Google video? All right, good amount. So for those that weren't, does anyone want to explain what Hacking Google is about so far? Yes.
It was a documentary about a hacking attempt or successful hacking attempts on Google and about how they responded.
Yep. So it's basically, well, I would say that's basically a big advertisement for Google's what is it? White hat hacking team. So yeah, but it's super well produced. So it's just really interesting to look at. So we're gonna watch it right now.
But to an average person, if they're not proficient in programming with Google.
Enter Dimitri Alpera.
Security was here. Please call this number. We had a stack of hard drives and a stack of machines in the trunk of the car. By that stage, we had a number of people just kind of churning through, looking at the different systems and figuring out what happened on this machine.
While the team was running forensics around the clock, Heather raised the alarm for others.
I got this call from Heather Atkins, who wanted to chat with me about something that they had discovered at Google.
Enter Dmitry Alperovich. He's the chairman of Silverado Policy Accelerator, a global cybersecurity think tank. But back in 2009, he was honing his craft at a security firm called McAfee. What began as professional courtesy turned into partnership as Dmitry and his team were willing to roll up their sleeves.
Google shared malware code with us, zeros and ones effectively. So we immediately put a team on trying to dissect that exploit, understand how it works. And most of it is mumbo jumbo to an average person if they're not proficient in programming. But occasionally you see these code words that will be recognizable to anyone. The word Aurora jumped out immediately in those first minutes of looking at the malware.
Aurora. Why would that jump off the page? Well, October 1917. A shot rings out from a Russian ship patrolling the Baltic. The show was empty. The message wasn't. A shot that would start the Russian Revolution and forever change the course of the 20th century. And the name of the battleship that fired the fateful shot? You guessed it. Aurora.
When I saw it, I instantaneously knew that I had to name the whole operation Aurora.
Because just as the battleship Aurora fired a single shot that sent shockwaves resonating decades afterward,
Operation Aurora in cyberspace, I think, had a similar effect. The world has changed. We have to change everything about the industry's approach to cybersecurity to deal with this new threat.
when you get attacked, it's a bit like playing a game of chess. If your opponent opposite you knows every move you're going to make, it's going to be very easy for them to build counter moves to checkmate. We wanted to keep that element of surprise for as long as possible by studying as much as we can about the attack and then cutting them off instantaneously. The team went to great lengths to keep the investigation absolutely secret.
We pretty much had to lock down the entire floor.
There was a secret list of who could come in or out. We would put security guards outside the door, a little bit speakeasy style. You had to kind of know how to get in. Even cleaning staff weren't allowed in the main war room.
Pizza boxes and empty coffee cups kind of sprayed throughout the room.
It was smelly for quite some time. They stopped corresponding with each other online, just in case we were being watched.
The access controls to the room were tight. We had senior VPs, we had the founders of the company with us. It was, it was tense.
As we're building this picture of how the attacker is working, it's a rush of adrenaline because you can start to plot points of how to eradicate them from the network. The team narrowed in, set traps, and positioned themselves to attack. There was only one problem: holiday break. We always wonder if the attackers picked the holidays on purpose.
They know most people aren't paying attention during the holidays.
It wasn't our first Christmas where something interesting had come up. Just before springing on the attacker, the team pivoted. We suddenly decided we wanted to be very radical in our approach. So what was that radical approach?
We knew we had to get everyone off the network now. We had to make the biggest change we ever made to our infrastructure, and we had to do it in less than an hour.
And who would be responsible for pulling the trigger?
I do the short straw, so part of my role was really to cut off everybody from the network.
That's right, everybody. Google engineers, security researchers, even Heather, were to be cut off from the network and their passwords reset.
I did not make any friends at the company over Christmas.
This was the only option, to make absolutely sure that any hooks the attacker had at Google were completely eradicated. And with that, the team hit go, systematically purging the attacker from all systems all at once. The attacker was banished from the network. But one question still remained. Who was behind this attack? On January 12th of 2010, Google announced it had witnessed a sophisticated and targeted attack.
It was shocking. Google was one of the first companies ever that voluntarily disclosed that they've been hacked.
And in the investigation of that event, we found that at least 20 other companies were compromised as well. We were able to lend some experience that we gathered.
Not only did they come out and publicly reveal they didn't hack, but for the first time, they were able to attribute the attack.
In mid-December, we detected a highly sophisticated and targeted attack on our corporate infrastructure. Originating from China, we discovered in our investigation that the accounts of dozens of Gmail users around the world who advocate for human rights in China appear to have been accessed by third parties.
The president is obviously aware of it. As with all intrusions, we employ an all-of-government approach with the appropriate agency in the lead. In this case, the FBI is coordinating the response.
Now the cyber battle has heated up and may have far-reaching consequences.
I didn't used to think that a foreign military would come after us, and now they obviously are. Well, where are the new boundaries? What's internationally accepted legitimate action?
So not a surprise that you would see governments hacking each other. I think it's a little bit of a surprise to us when we saw attacks happening against private companies, against companies that were enabling business online, helping students learn, helping people express themselves. That seemed out of bounds.
We view it as our job to stand between these very capable government attackers and individuals who can't possibly be expected to defend against that. We chose to stand in between.
We stopped them, but I'm not convinced that they would never try again. So we decided we wanted to start making radical changes, not just rebuilding things the way that we had them before, but we wanted to do things completely different. Ways people have never dreamed of before, ways attackers have never dreamed of before. We were going to change the battlefield. I'm realistic that there will be threat actors who want to do the same thing. We try again. I want them to have a very bad day.
All right, that was episode 0. Oh. So, a couple events coming up. We have a next coding interview practice next Tuesday. And actually, let me know. Do you guys want to be another review session about trees? Since I know we didn't go over that in that review session, or do you want to cover a new topic? So, how about raise your hand if you plan to go, and if you want it to be about trees and review that. Okay. What about a new topic? All right. So I guess, yeah, I'll think of a new topic, then we'll cover that. We have a next game night next Thursday. As always, it's very fun. And then we have a next meetup next Tuesday, 2 Tuesdays from now. So definitely, if you are interested in presenting, if it's definitely a great way to get practice, no stakes, just practice your presentation skills. And also, get involved with the club. So if you want to eventually be a board member or you want to contribute to the club in some way, this is definitely the way to do that. So yeah, that is it. If you're not in the Discord, there's a QR code. If you're not signed up on Google's own club platform, then there's a QR code here. But I will wrap up the meeting here. Thank you all so much for coming.